introduce myself. My name is Maria Rolim. I'm one of the founders of our law firm, which practices in Brazil for 25 years. We founded it 25 years ago. Is it okay? Well, exactly. And I work basically with energy. I'm a lawyer and an economist, and I have a PhD in energy and sustainability. I'm not talking, our law firm, by the way, we followed sustainable development goals, or try to follow. It's not, it's quite a new thing for law firms, but we are trying to improve it. But I'm not here to talk about us specifically, but to talk about energy in Brazil, and specifically in this part about the transition and the need to do a transition in the grid to adopt and to have the other technologies and the new source of energy coming and changing what we call the energy transition. And judging by the other panels, I can say that all of them I can see a relationship between the other presentations and the importance of diversification in the energy source and to change our energy pattern of consumption and so on. Okay, so that's the talk. I'm going to talk a little bit, the energy transition and smart grid in Brazil. And it is a topic and a question that brings together all the parts, I would say, the government, the companies, the private sector, the NGOs, and so on. I think energy in general has this kind of issue involving all the parts. First of all, the challenge to meet the conventional grid. I mean, by conventional grid, I mean the way we deliver our energy today, the grid, the network industry, let's say. Brazil has committed himself to the Paris Agreement, which I have to say I'm not talking in the government capacity, I'm talking my own capacity, but I've been working in Brazil for such a long time in the energy sector, so please feel free to talk about the government as well, because I've been working for them for such a long time, so I can understand part of the position now. So it's quite a good opportunity to be here talking about Brazil at this stage of negotiations. And so far Brazil has committed himself to deliver some targets under the Paris Agreement, and part of these targets is to invest in renewables and put our mix in renewables at least 45% by 2030. And I have to say that we're almost there, which is good, which is very good. In 2017, our energy mix is about 43% of renewables already. I have to say that for us is a bit kind of different or to talk about changing our energy mix, because we are thinking about changing water, which is already clean, specifically in the power sector, to another source like wind and solar. We might have the opportunity to listen my colleague Rodrigo talk about the wind later on. So, but in any case, as we had your presentation, very good, water in Brazil is an issue. Although we have a lot of water, our water now is in the Amazon area, which is very sensitive to build energy and big dams like Belo Monte and any other big dams in Brazil. So our challenge is to change water for other things. So when I'm talking about 43% of our energy mix, it still have water, because I'm talking about the raw energy mix, but we see in the power sector specifically. So what are challenges to the conventional grid nowadays? Well, it basically are the renewable source itself. They are they are good, but they put pressure in the grid system because they came in a different way. They are intermittent. They have other challenges to deal with. Dissemination of distributed generation, which puts challenge again in specific areas. So when I say it puts some challenge, I mean we are used to deliver the energy in a vertical way, just straight away from the source to the consumer itself. And now we have you are starting the whole world, and Brazil in particular, dealing with different sources coming in at the same time and with different challenge for the conventional grid. And the growth of electrical mobility, which every people say, yeah, that's very good, but depend on the source of the energy. Because it doesn't mean that you have an electrical vehicle, you are green. You can be very dirty yet if you are having a source that is not clean at all. So all these increase let's say, the inadequacy of our conventional grid nowadays, not only in Brazil, but I mean all the place, but maybe in Brazil you have this pressure a little bit stronger, let's say. So I like to put this because I always think it's quite impressive to look at the Brazil network system. In any case, Brazil is huge, is a continent, it's almost the same size as Africa. I would say I was born in Africa, so I like to do this mix, although raised in Brazil. And today we have already, some of our systems are isolated, but we have a very well-connected system in Brazil, very, very demanding to operate. I've been visiting the transmission operated system. I work with them, and it's really impressive. It's like to see how they deal with all this challenge, because it's water. We have to be, they have to be on point, timely, to keep the lights on everywhere. And we expect to be in 27, with a little bit, let us say, we expect to have more difficult to deal with this source of distributed generated energy coming in, and loads of new source, intermittent source, basically concentrating our transmission system in the part of northeast and south of Brazil. What is interesting in this map is that we don't plan to expand our system with loads of new lines in the Amazon forest. We try to protect this part. If you see that you are just expanding part of the line, the big lines in the Amazon area, to reach actually the other countries and to bring in energy from the other countries. So that's a quite good scenario, I would say, although we still have to do something there. We don't want to make the Amazon area to look like the other areas with loads of transmission line, because they also damage the environmental. I've been visiting one of the big ones. It's impressive really to see the size of the towers, and even the management after they build it has to be by helicopter. Is really amazing to see, but really very difficult to deal with and to put them up with the environmental issues around. Well, so what are you talking about? We are talking about the challenge of developed smart grids, basically. Smart grid is not only smart meter. Smart grid is a more intelligent way of managing. It changed completely the way we do business today in the transmission system. They change from, let's say, a deliverer of energy to someone to management basically the contracts and all the source coming in. So grid automation, I would say, smart grids would enhance security and quality of the grid, basically reliability of the grid as well, integration of the renewable source, and management of the distributed power assets. So that's something we need to do. We have some policy in place to develop it, but we don't have, and that's the point, a completely system in place, a completely organized plan to have it in time. So the particular characteristics of Brazil market energy sector put some of pressure in this challenge. Actually, we have market conditions that do not favor the diffusion of technology, the innovation process itself. I don't believe there is some. It is a bit controversial. I've been talking with some friends, and they think, well, market is prepared to deliver it. But in my opinion, I believe that the market needs some public policy specific to support it. I think market, the characteristics of Brazil do not itself put the market, motivate the market to do it on its own. But there is space for both, as I believe. Basically because we have water as a source of energy, which means that we have to balance demand and supply instantly all the time. We have electricity is kind of, and I'm talking about electricity just to say that we think it's the future, and the electricity, we need electricity for the future, so I'm talking about the electricity in specific. We don't have a differentiation of the product. It doesn't matter if it comes the water, wind, oil, when you have it at the end of the day, it is electricity anyway. We have a kind of inelastic demand. Everyone needs energy, electricity to live, and we have a public service obligations character is very strong in our system because we are huge, we are people that still don't have electricity, so you still have to regulate the companies to deliver it in some way. And our regulatory model as well, because it's based in remunerating the assets itself, but it's not very focused on remunerated investment in new technologies, which make it a kind of a problem itself to development of smart grids. And although we have a very well developed telecom business in place, we don't have a very good connection or integration between telecommunications and the energy and industry, which would kind of give a push in smart grids and even to save some of the investments in the sector. So basically the conclusion is that to have this technological transition to smart grids we need public policy in place. So let's see what we have as an options. We have loads of possibilities in terms of public policy. I select some inspired maybe in the European Union, and we are considering some of them, but all of them have pros and cons, and I'll focus a little bit more on the cons, on the negative aspects of it, because there where we really need help. First of all, we could adopt, we don't have it in Brazil yet, a mandatory smart meter rollout, saying that we need to put it in place at some point in the future. The problem is now being discussed is the data privacy, which consumers basically say, well, I'm not so sure if they will take care of my data, how it will be. I don't want to expose the way I consume energy, and I don't believe in the system that will keep it safe. And also the cost benefits analysis, which is really important to have. Even in Europe, they say you need to have it before there is a directive to deliver it, but it doesn't mean that everyone has to deliver it at the same time, not even the same way. I heard, for instance, that Germany said that so far, under a cost-benefit analysis, it's not good for them to implant these meters, smart meters now. Well, let's see. Brazil, we don't have this policy yet. Another possibility is, or together, or maybe both together, can be adopted, is, which I think is much more important in Brazil at this stage, is to change the regulatory framework for investment in this area. Network industry today in Brazil is regulated, and it is price capped system, which does not motivate investment in innovation. It motivates its focus on investment in the asset itself, in the tower, which doesn't companies don't feel like investing in new technologies because they are not remunerated by that properly, I would say. It is a discussion with the regulator all the time. I follow the companies, I go to them, I can see the difficulties of doing so. To give an example, the UK has quite recently changed the way it regulates and remunerates the transmission system, the grid, which they adopt is the R, we call RIO, which means revenue will be like investment, incentives plus investment plus output, which is a completely different way that remunerate the industry so far we have used in the world. In Brazil, we need to consider that. Well, we can also promote the distributed generation. Why? Because it puts a lot of pressure in the company, because we have the prosumer idea. We are not only a consumer, but you have to deal with this bi-directional flow of energy, which puts a lot of pressures to make the change itself and to promote this change to deal with the new technologies. But still the big problem is storage technologies, batteries basically, because we are talking about solar, wind, intermittence, and difficulties to deal with. And of course we can also improve relationships with the telecommunications industry, which is kind of difficult again, because they put them together doesn't mean the network quality will improve. Maybe you have to think about something more compulsory, or some sharing of infrastructure is something that we need to consider more how to regulate it. But well, I'm not extending too much. I have some final considerations, and after that I would like to have some food for thought, which I think is the best part to all the discussions. Well, as I said, it's kind of a summary what I said. Grid automation or smart grid is crucial to do this transition, to have new technology. So we need to consider distributed generation and energy storage, electrical mobility, which will consume loads of energy, electricity, renewable sources, which are really good, but I used to say we need to be careful, otherwise Brazil will end up with no lights on, because it will be solar, wind, water, bio this, bio that, but at the end of the day you need to back up your base, and maybe you need to develop some thermal electricity to some extent. So we need to consider which fuel we'll put in our thermal. Natural gas, biofuels, we don't know. We need to forget coal. We still have a little bit, but we need to forget it, and to forget oil, because otherwise we will be kind of against the world, but we don't know the future so far. Let's see how it goes in the new government. We need to think about how to make the best of our expansion of our transmission system. We don't need to build many more transmission lines, because they are a problem itself for the environment. And to improve efficiency and grid reliability, and also the demand size, which I didn't put here, but demand size policies to use energy in a more efficient way. The key factors are really to attention to the particularities of the Brazilian market. We have very specific issues. I think every country has, but Brazil, because it's really huge, as other people mentioned, Luciana mentioned in her presentation, we need to be careful. We are not talking about one country, we are talking about a really different one country with different countries inside, in terms of development, in terms of access to things, and in terms of everything. And development of new technologies, great part for private parts to play a role. Finance options, as Luciana mentioned again, that's the big challenge. And consistent public policy by the Brazilian government. We need predictability. Every private parts like predictability, so they can count and they can invest and rely that it will be there for some time. The rules will not change that much in the middle of the game, let's say. Well, just for us to kind of think in an event like this, I think it's really important to stop a little bit to think what are really the drivers of this process everywhere. Well, we can have environmental issues like the best scenario to have all of them. The environmental mentality, let's tackle climate change, which is our dream, let's protect our nature and so on. The mindset, I would say, political will, what are the government priorities, something that now in Brazil is a bit in doubt, I would say, but still there is something that is a driver for the change, and the economic itself. The economic is the industry in place. And I would say that although the political issues in Brazil are a bit under discussion, the economic itself is there. I would not say that we can ignore the private sector in Brazil in the energy area, the renewables energy in Brazil. I think they are there, they are operating, so you have to realize that it's not feasible to think about that they will ignore the industry there. I've been working with them for 20 years and I know they are really powerful there. And the key questions is, funding is essential. That's the problem, and we don't have money, basically. Show them the money and we know how to do it. We need help more in funding than anything else. So what is the role of the government are the key question, but also the role of the private sector to see and to use the opportunities available. So we need a private sector mature and ready to deliver it. And also the society to really put pressure on the government and to change, to shape the consumer preference. They shape the way the government acts itself. It is a bit hard, but that's the way we do the things. That's the way we put pressure on the government. We keep an eye on them, and we keep watch what they are doing and asking for more. That's the role of the society. And also the international community, because I think everyone is asking something from Brazil. I would like to ask yourself what the developed countries can do for us. Like, we need money. The rainforest is a wonderful place. It's beautiful, as I can show you. I took my picture myself when I visited the rainforest. It is an amazing place, but we need to use it to some extent and develop world instead of just asking for Brazil to give something, should give us some help to how to protect the lands of the world. Thank you very much, and of course I'm available anytime to discuss it.